This is a CS952 Introduction to Web Technologies and Design. And in this week, we're going to really cover some exciting material. We're going to be creating a gallery page. We're going to be working with images. We're going to learn how to create and save our own snippets of code. We'll be creating media queries, learning how to make the display of those images in our image gallery change depending on the viewing width of our device. We'll learn how to use CSS transitions and kind of have some fun at the end of this module. But for right now, we want to get started. We just want to open up our gallery page because that's a page that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to go over here to my Files menu. When we want to open up a file, we always go to our Files tab. And I can see a list of the pages that we created when we were cranking out our pages from our template. And I'm just going to double click on Gallery. The view that you see when you start up kind of depends on what was the last view you were using when you were working with Dreamweaver. So I'm going to click on Code View because we actually want to be in Code View. If you're not in Code View, click to put yourself in Code View. Now you'll notice in Code View, as when we mentioned this before when we were working on our home page, our index page, most of the content is grayed out. It's grayed out because it's in a locked area. The content that's inside of our template, those regions are locked. We can't make any editing. The only place that we can make any changes are where we can see this area that says main content. We can also see we can change the title of our page. So there are a few selected areas where we can make changes to our content, but most of our page right now is locked out. But that's okay because everything that we're going to be adding to our page, we're going to add it right here where it says main content. But I don't need those words, main content, so I'm going to delete those. So there's a couple different ways to do it. I could highlight the words main content and just hit delete, or I'm going to click right there on main content again. I can click on this tag in my status bar where it says MM Instance Editable. If I click on that, you'll notice I get the same result. It highlights all the main content. So I'm going to hit, you can hit backspace or delete. I tend to hit backspace. Just gets rid of the content. Now I'm going to hit the Enter key twice just to give myself a little room. Now I'm going to move my cursor up one line. So I'm sitting on line 74. Line 74 for me is an empty line. Your number line count might be a little different, but somewhere around here. Now notice that my DOM panel is grayed out, and I'm getting a message from Dreamweaver saying you've made changes to the code. Hit F5 to refresh. This is true. I have made changes to the code. And so I'm going to hit F5, and then Dreamweaver is going to check to make sure that it's displaying all the current information, that our DOM panel and everything that we're seeing is reflective of the changes we've made to the code. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a div. And we're going to do that by going under the Insert menu at the top. And when I click on that, notice the very first item is the div. The div, that's our MVP, most valuable player when it comes to putting a web page together. And I'm going to select to add a div. All the content on my page is going to be built around this div. And when I do, I get a new dialog box we haven't seen before, the Insert Div dialog box. Now, it's kind of similar to the dialog box we saw when we were working in live view. If I click where it says Insert, it says Add Insert Point. This is what we want because we've got our cursor at line 74, and that's exactly where we want to add our code. But if I click on the little drop-down menu, you can see a before tag, after started tag. It's a different version of that same dialog box we get when we're in live view. But we're going to leave it at insertion point. We can also choose at the time that we add this div to make it a member of a class or to assign an ID to that div. And we are going to make it a member of the container class. We'll learn a lot more about container next week. This is a bootstrap element. But I'm going to click on my drop down arrow and I'm just going to scroll down. Remember, all of these classes that we see, these are not standard HTML classes that you would find anytime you start editing a web page. These are all here because we're using the bootstrap CSS file. So I'm going to click on container and I'm good to go now. I'm going to insert a div at the insertion point. It's going to be a member of the class container, so I can say OK. So here's my div. You'll see that we've got placeholder content added. And you'll notice in our DOM panel, it says div. And in our DOM panel, it says div.container, which means it's a member of the container class. And then when we actually look at the HTML code, it says div class equals container. And remember that CSS selectors, they're that link that ties together what's happening in CSS with what is happening on the HTML page. So it's no surprise that we see the word container on the HTML page, and we also see the word container as a description of our CSS class. So I don't need this content that says content for class container goes here. So once again, I'm going to hit backspace just to delete that content. Once again, Dreamweaver would like us to refresh the page, so I can hit F5 or just click on refresh. So at this point, we've taken advantage of working in code view where we can just easily zero in on exactly where we want to make our changes. There are almost no limits to the kind of editing that you can do in code view, but moving forward, we're going to switch back to live view. So I'm going to click on live view up here at the top. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in several child elements to our container. We're going to nest a lot of content inside of that container div. And before I go any further, I want to click on my green media query bar. When I hover over it, it says max width 767 pixels. The shortcut for this is to call it the extra small view. I often think of this as the mobile view because this is outside of any of our media queries. This is the default layout. Remember, our websites are mobile first. So the default styling rules that we create will always apply, and they will always apply to the mobile view. So let's click on that little green bar, and you'll notice that my display width gets to be a little bit smaller. Now we're going to insert some Bootstrap components. So we're going to click on the Insert panel. Right, there we go. We're going to go to Insert, and we're going to insert a grid row with a column. Now this actually inserts two divs. It's very handy. These are frequently used Bootstrap elements. You'll notice that the first Bootstrap element there is container, then we have container fluid. We'll learn more about the differences between these next week. But we're going to click on grid row with a column. So let's click on that. And we get a dialog box that is unique to the grid row with a column. It says insert row with columns. So the first thing we see is we see insert row, and we have a before, an after, and nest. Very similar to what we've seen when we've been working in live view. We definitely want to click on nest because we're going to be putting this new content inside of that div with the class of container. So we're nesting it inside of the container. This is going to be a child element of the div with the class of container. The div with the class of container is going to be the parent element. So let's click on nest. The next question we're asked is how many columns do you want to add? Well, Bootstrap supports up to 12 columns, so this could be any number from 1 to 12. We're going to choose 1 because we're going to keep all of our content in one column. All of our images are all going to be right next to each other. So we are all set. We can just say OK. Now when we do that, notice that in our DOM panel, it added a new div tag, but underneath that there's a little bit more to look at. So I can click on that drop down arrow, and I can see it actually added, not only did it add a div with the class of row, but it added another div with a class of XS-12. Now this is kind of Bootstrap shortcut, meaning that this div that we've added, it's a column. That's what .col means. It's got a class of column. XS means that the default size for this is the extra small view. And it's XS, it's extra small, because we clicked in that media bar and selected extra small. If we clicked on the little blue bar for medium, then instead of saying column XS for extra small, it would say column MD for medium. And then 12. Why does it say 12? Because this means that the content is going to take up 12 columns. It's going to be one giant column. Okay, great. So that's all correct. What I want to do now is inside of this div, this last div, column extra small 12, we're going to nest another element. We're going to go to Insert, we're going to choose Heading, and we are going to add an H2 element. So it's under Insert. We're we're going to go to heading, and we're going to choose H2. And I'm going to click on that. Now we get this familiar dialog box we've seen before, and we'll see it again. Dreamweaver is asking us, this H2, do you want to insert it before the div with a class of column extra small 12? After it? Do you want to wrap it around it? Or do you want to nest it? We want to nest it because, again, this H2 is going to live inside of the div with a class of column extra small 12. So we choose nest. When we nest it, we make it a child element. And when we do that, we get this nice big box that says this is the content for layout H2 tag. Well, we're going to change this to gallery, and we do that by double-clicking. And when we double-click, notice that the blue border kind of changed to like an orangish border. I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to type gallery, G-A-L-L-E-R-Y. Now, I don't want to hit enter. If I hit enter, it's actually going to insert a line break. I can just click anywhere off of where I've been editing, and we've got it. So what we've added, we're going to be using this code over and over again. A container that holds a row, that holds a div with a column extra small 12, and then inside of that, we've got our H2 tag. We're going to be using this on all of our pages. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to switch back to code view. And when we switch to code view, you can see it's very nice how everything's being displayed in code view. You can see how the content is indented, and just by looking at it, you understand the relationship of these different divs. You can see that the container is the parent element, and the next child is the row, the next child is the column extra small 12, and then inside of that we've got our gallery. Here's what I want to do. I want to highlight all of this code. Okay? This is all code that we've added. Everything else is all gray, right? Next, I'm going to go to Window. I'm going to choose Snippets. Remember snippets? We've visited snippets before. And this time, rather than using an existing snippet, we're going to create our own snippet. And we do that by clicking on this little plus icon down here that says New Snippet. And our new snippet dialog box opens. The first thing we want to know is what's the name of it. And we're going to call it starting code, capital S-T-A-R-T-I-N-G. I'm going to use the underscore character, then capital C-O-D-E. We call this snake typing. We're not going to give it a description right now, but under snippet type, we're going to choose insert block, because rather than wrapping this around some content, we're just going to insert this as a solid block. So we can choose insert block. And we're good. Now we just click OK. And when we do that, we can now see that we've got this little snippet down here that says starting code. So if I'd like to, I have different parts of existing snippets already that we visited. I could drag this up and put it inside of my Bootstrap snippets. Maybe I'll do that because let me close that up. Because I'm going to be primarily using this when I'm working with Bootstrap. So right there it says starting code. Okay, I'm going to close my snippets window. And I'm going to hit save. So now we are ready to move on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start adding images to our website. But we've really accomplished a lot in this first video.